You're all set.
Okay. Good evening. Welcome to the Government Operations Committee. It's March 3rd, Monday. It is approximately 5:34. In attendance at the table, we have Councillor Beck, Councillor Mallor, Councillor Tremble, myself, Councillor Hawes. We have Councillor Fish. We have Councillor Dean, Council Chair Pelletier, and we have Councillor. Is he there? Can you hear us?
Yes.
Councilor Leonard is joining us on Zoom, and we have Assistant City Manager Courtney O'Donnell with us. Before we do the first item, can I just kind of mention this policy, the new policy that we have?
The new policy?
Well, our meeting, our
Oh, the
public comment
Oh,
policy.
sure.
This is the first week where we're using our new public comment policy. It can be found in its entirety on the website, and I would recommend that everybody take a peek at that. But for tonight's purposes, just some of the highlights. If we're having, like tonight, we have some informational updates on here by whatever department it's gonna be. Tonight, it's from the fire chief, and we have one from the public health director. Those are not items that we would entertain public comment on. That's really just informational for the council as to what the departments have been doing. If there are items that going to be, need council approval or recommendation to the council, but we are gonna be voting on something, those items we would have, individuals would be allowed to speak once per the agenda item. The comment should be directed to the chair. And as all of our policies, even our council meetings state, any obscene, threatening, overly repetitive remarks will be interrupted and removed. So that's just to lay that out. Please do look at the full policy on the website. Any questions from the council on that? You've seen it, okay. All right. Moving on, our first item, we have a Bangor wildfire risk and preparedness discussion.
Yes, joining us tonight is Fire Chief Jeffrey Lowe. Welcome him to the table. I think this might be his first committee meeting.
Yes. I said like we can.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Have a seat.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for having me here. Back in January, California experienced those wildfires in the Los Angeles area. And there was a question from council about our wildfire preparedness and equipment we have on hand and those types of things. So thankfully, you gave me a little bit of time since I had just landed to actually look at a few things and get a handle on what's happening here locally. And I crafted a memo for you that I believe is in your packet that you've been able to see. If you'll indulge me, I'll just go through this real quick and then I'll answer whatever questions you have as we come out of this process. So there is absolutely a risk of wildfire in the city of Bangor and in the neighboring communities. Maine is what is predominantly considered a wildland interface area. Where residential structures are very often found within the tree lines or where the wilderness encroaches on undeveloped areas. Place you might not find that is mostly down around Portland and some of those areas. But if you look at outer Essex Street or you look at outer Broadway or some of those other things, or even in the area where the Bangor Forest is, you'll see that there are residences and developments that are tucked in among the woods. And those are what we would consider wild and urban interface. You just can't get away from it in Maine. It's one of, if not the heaviest forested state. So how we're trained, if you follow along with the memo here, we are trained in basic wildland fire suppression. That means that we know how to put water on wildfires, which is different than building fires. We know how to build fire lines to help prevent fire spread. More importantly is we're pretty well versed in managing resources. So while we may be short-staffed when we first arrive, as we bring in outside help from other communities, we're better able, or we have a good ability rather, to manage those resources and assign them correctly, so they're used as effectively as possible. So the training is there. We meet minimum training requirements. Apparatus and tools, basically for us, we have a tanker truck that is out in the station at the airport. We have all of the fire engines carry water and hand tools in them that are capable of doing some wildland fire suppression. Really, where most of our responses are focused on the urban area, we rely very heavily on mutual aid, whether it's Glenburn or Herman or Feezy or whoever it is that can come in and lend a hand with some of those other vehicles, like all-terrain vehicles, additional tanker trucks and those types of things. So we have tools and equipment, but for the specialty stuff, we rely on the outside areas because we don't have a huge call for it that would justify us purchasing a lot of those things. And then in turn, in terms of mutual aid, when they have a building fire or whatever, that's when we go out and assist them with our structural equipment or the equipment we use to like building fires and that type of stuff. The standard response for us to a wildland fire initially when we get the call is just one fire engine, because we never know what it's going to be. It could be simply somebody burning in their backyard and somebody saw smoke coming up over a house, or it could be something a little bit deeper in the woods, but we don't over-resource a wildland fire initially until we know more about what we're dealing with. Now, if we're on the way and we get 3 or 4 calls, the police department shows up in the scene and says, hey, there's a lot of things happening here, there's a big fire here, then we will assign other trucks and whatnot to it. If we had a significant wildfire in the city of Bangor that was a couple acres or more, all of the Bangor fire resources, that's all the fire trucks and all the ambulances would be committed to fighting that fire. And we would bring in outside help to assist us with those other roles. So that's how we would respond to those. Depending on how fast it's moving, our initial actions might be somewhat delayed. Rather than put people in a position that would get them in trouble, it may be better off for us to take a step back and just evaluate and then bring resources in along the sides or whatever. So it's really going to be it's really going to depend on a lot of different variables as to how aggressive we are going out the gate. At some point, that pendulum will swing the other way, and we'll be super aggressive about how we're managing it. But that's how we would manage it starting out. As you can see there, Maine wildfires. Nearly all wildfires in Maine are preventable. They're caused by careless disposal of smoky material. Very often we find them to be caused by outdoor burns that get out of control, whether a campfire, burning brush, those types of things. Maybe sparks coming off of an exhaust system or a chainsaw or any of those types of things will certainly start wildfires. Those that are not caused by people are typically caused by lightning, and I guess you can have the occasional rock striking rock and some type of slide or whatever where you spark, but it's usually either caused by people or by lightning are the 2 biggest drivers for that. You'll see in here that we do talk a little bit about the weather and the vegetation. We talk about the weather. There has been some climatic change that you've noticed. If you grew up in the 70s, like I did, you can remember snowstorms where you had feet upon feet of snow dumped on you and you're out of school 3 or 4 days or whatever the case may be. Now we're lucky, I think, if we get 4 or 5 good days of snow during the wintertime. And that leads to problems when we look at the availability of moisture and what are called fine fuel products. And we'll talk about those in just a second. It also creates a longer window of risk because as the fall and early spring starts, things tend to dry out, relative humidity goes down, and the likelihood that those fuels are going to ignite increases dramatically. When I talk about fine fuels, what I'm talking about are pine needles and small twigs and branches, and those are the starter fuels that lead to the bigger fuels, like the logs that are on the ground or trees or what have you. The other variable besides fine fuels and humidity is wind. And we're certainly seeing more wind, I think, than we have in the past. Now there are some average wind speeds that we have, but when we have those dry conditions, late fall, early spring with significant winds of, we'll say 15 or greater miles an hour, that certainly increases our risk for a major conflagration. The last piece of the letter here is just about wildfire protection in general and things that people can do. Part of my assessment as I've come into the city is to start looking at our wildland urban interface areas, because I do have a great concern about those. We haven't had a significant burn off in the state of Maine in over 100 years. We still are dealing with down fuels from the ice storm of 1998, plus all the other litter that's accumulated on top of that, where there just hasn't been a good clearing burn. And there's forest management in Maine is pretty much done naturally as far as removing litter and those types of things. When I say litter, it's that pine needles and stuff. It's not paper and whatnot. So I do have a concern about that, especially when we get into that wild and urban interface that I talked about. So there are some things here that people can do that are within this memo. One talks about keeping vegetation and things like wood piles and those types of things away from your home if you possibly can. Now, I know it's a pain to go out and barbecue and be 30 feet from your house, but that is one of the recommended things that's put out by the National Fire, the Wildland Fire Group, I'm sorry. Making sure that if you are in that interface area, if you have pine needles that are built up on your roof or your gutters or those types of things, start cleaning those out when you can. Make sure that if you are using chainsaws on your property or you enjoy ATVs or whatever the case may be, that they're maintained and they're not sparking, that type of stuff. And then as always, be careful with smoking materials, or if you have a wood stove or a fireplace that you like to burn in the late fall or early spring, there isn't good snow cover on the ground yet. Just be careful about where you're disposing your ashes and make sure that they're not going into a pile where there is some of that debris. As I said, as I dig into this more, we will start doing in amongst other community risk reduction campaigns. We'll also start looking at some of this, and I would expect some of the things around this to start coming out this spring, just to raise some awareness in the community. And at some point, once I'm able to clearly focus on a couple different directions, one of them will be certainly addressing the risks that are in the community here and just raising some awareness. So that's a brief synopsis of the memo and the information in it. Certainly, if you have questions, I'd be more than willing to talk about them. As far as the memo goes, I don't know that I want to go too far off the rails on any other questions that you might have, but we'll see.
Councilor Leonard, do you have a question?
It was more so a comment. I just wanted to thank the fire chief for putting together a really good memo for what is very concerning for not just us, a very forested state, but also for the entire country. I think it is also important. I love what you brought up right at the end there, which was trying to focus on things that are potentially weaknesses or hazards that are relevant to Bangor itself. And when I read this memo, the first thing that came to mind was Hurricane Helene and all the flooding issues and all the structural damage and all the wind issues there. And that's stuff that we're seeing on a very seasonal, regular basis. So I actually look forward to seeing what your analysis is on those seasonal events too, because those are, in my personal opinion, much more relevant to us than forest fires. Not to say it's going to happen, knocking on wood here, but it's more likely that citizens are going to be more put to test with flooding issues and wind issues. But again, great job by the chief. Thank you, sir.
Any other comments, questions? That's right. They're all very quiet.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
for doing
absolutely.
that. Great report.
Jude?
Yeah, the next one is an order authorizing execution of an MOU with Wabanaki Public Health and Wellness for syringe waste disposal program. I believe we have Public Health Director Jen Gunderman, as well as, do you have other folks or is it just you?
Jason is here representing Wabanaki for any
Oh,
questions
great.
if needed.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you, everyone. Hope you're all doing well. So with the first item, the MOU with Wabanaki Public Health and Wellness. As you know, previously HEAL had a contract to help mitigate some of the syringe waste in the city of Bangor. Since that MOU came to an end, we've been working to find the right partner that offered really good infrastructure, high quality, high standards, and just really a nice collaboration. And we were able to find that with Wabanaki Public Health and Wellness. And so we are looking now to go into that MOU for syringe waste in our city. So that some things would be changing from the past HEAL MOU in terms of information going out. We'll be working with Wabanaki on the correct emails and contact information and getting that out to the public. Any questions or concerns?
Counselor Trimble?
What's the time frame of the contract?
We haven't discussed.
Was the price you're getting here?
Oh, I'm sorry, up to 1 year, sorry.
Okay,
1
so
year.
the price is for 1 year?
The price is for
contract?
1
Okay.
year.
Because I mean, I think that's reasonable. I just didn't think we would be able to get anything near what we got before for pricing. And this is, I know it's substantially higher, but it seems reasonable for what we're asking in the contract.
Yes, it's so for the 1 year, thank you. We worked with Wabanaki to come to a good price point, and we knew that for better quality, we were gonna
And
pay.
this is gonna come out of the opiate settlement
Yes,
money
yes.
as well.
And if I could, I would add that this isn't up to. So Wabanaki
Right.
will be billing us based on actual cost and
Mhm.
work. And as our relationship changes in the coming months, we'll have opportunities to revisit.
Other questions, comments?
I'd move approval.
One question,
We have one.
the,
Councilor Mel.
monies that went to HEAL have been returned to us, correct?
So this is a different bit of money separate from the ARPA funds. So this money for
Yeah, I
syringe
understand.
waste, so
But I just,
we received bills from them, but there was near the end of the contract when they weren't filling obligations, they never sent us invoices to be paid.
no, that wasn't my question. My
Okay.
question was, we have money coming back from HEAL, is that correct? City manager,
Yes, you do.
and that can be used to offset this, or can it not?
Actually, those are a return of ARPA funds. So what our recommendation is to use our opioid settlement funds.
So what are we doing with the money that's coming back?
You had reallocated it as part of your ARPA reallocation and you added it to your wastewater treatment. So we have already ensured that we're in compliance with federal regulation.
Have we received the money back from HEAL yet?
We have not.
Will we?
Yes.
We hope. How much money was involved?
$138,000.
Thank you.
Other comments, questions? Oh, Councilor Beck.
Just a question, so the contract we had with HEAL, that was out of opioid settlement money as well. They completed that contract, like there was no money coming back from that contract.
No.
Okay, so I got that piece. So being that the opioid settlement money is an ongoing thing, so we're gonna see how this goes. Are we possibly gonna be talking about them like an ongoing thing for future years, maybe?
I think we're taking it 1 year at a time. Our first year with HEAL was absolutely a pilot and we learned a lot from that for the changes that we want to do this year. I think, particularly with our strengthening partnership with Wabanaki, we have the opportunity to really think about syringe services and syringe waste over the next year. So I would say, I think things could change.
Sure. And just a follow-up, so as far as how this works, I know with our C-Click Fix, if you see needles, there's actually a section for that you could put on there. Is it gonna be where we encourage people still use that system and that gets forwarded to Wabanaki?
Yeah, so we'll still be using a lot of the systems that, when people report things here to the city, and then we'll be triaging just like we do and be working with Wabanaki on how to best appropriately respond to those requests.
And once everything's finalized, we will make sure that the word is out there, so folks understand the different options that they have to report and receive assistance related to syringe waste.
Sure. Well, I'm excited to see how this goes.
So, thank you.
I think
So
there's
you
a
need-
motion on the floor.
Oh,
There is,
No second.
there was no
Oh,
second.
yeah.
Council Trumbull, you made the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Seconded. Is there any discussion? Objection to it going, this has to go to council, correct?
Yes, it will be on the next council agenda. Yep.
Hearing, seeing no objections, it will move on to the next council meeting.
Thank you.
Okay.
And actually, this is fortuitous because the next item is public health update by Jen herself.
Hi. Thanks for being here, Jason. So my purpose to be with you here today is to provide some public health updates from the last time that I met with you. And the first update that I'd like to provide is around the HIV cluster in the Bangor area. For anyone who's been sort of following along in the news, and what I have shared with you, thank you, Jason, is a snapshot of what is available on the Maine CDC website. We are at 21 confirmed cases. There has been a significant increase in the number of cases over about the past 4 or 5 weeks. We are expecting this number to increase from the nature of this cluster. As you can see, we are still dealing with a population of people who are often already marginalized in our community, people who inject drugs, people who are experiencing homelessness. What I can tell you is that the response in our local community by local partners has been nothing short of amazing. We are doing everything on the ground to break down as many barriers as possible for people to receive education, to receive testing, to receive care and treatment, to receive Ryan White services, to receive PrEP. We are also trying to meet with national experts and leaders in other parts of the state that have dealt with situations like this to get their input, their knowledge, their lessons learned, so that we can be innovative and creative in employing strategies to address this cluster.
Council, Trumbull.
If this had started out with, I mean, and it was still 2 or 3 cases, we'd be paying attention to it, but when's it become a cluster or an outbreak? What's classified as?
So I'm going to be honest with you. I'm trained as an epidemiologist, and my definition that I've always lived by is more than expected cases is an outbreak.
Okay,
In my mind, this is an outbreak.
yeah, right.
Maine CDC has classified this as a cluster for other epidemiological definitions that they're using. So that's why we continue to use the word cluster.
Is it clustered because it's contained in one area or
There's a
geographically or
lot of
anything?
variations
Okay.
in how to use the words,
Okay.
terms, and cluster.
Okay.
Sometimes cluster is used when you don't have the molecular pieces that connect all the cases. So the terms are used interchangeably at times.
And I know it does seem like in the last 4 or 5 weeks it's grown, and you said it
Yes.
did, but where were we at before? We were like at 14 or 15 cases about 6 weeks ago?
About 6 weeks ago, we were at like 15.
So it's gone up like
Mhm.
50% on basically in the past 6 weeks.
And so the question often becomes why?
Right.
Why is this increase? Well, there is a few different reasons why. One is that because partners are really finding all these creative ways to break down barriers and to encourage testing, more testing has happened. And transmission could be also continuing. So it's hard to know one exact reason, but it's probably a combination of many issues. We also know that, thank goodness to our partners at Wabanaki Public Health and Wellness, they've stepped into the syringe service space, which has also increased a lot of our testing because of that robust infrastructure that they have there, and a comprehensive approach to providing care. And we are working everything from testing to breaking down barriers for people to get care. There's only one infectious disease practice in the city in Bangor. PCHC is using a street outreach model to work with infectious disease. We have CHCS and PCHC and Wabanaki and others helping to find housing for people who aren't housed. We are going out in the field and filling out Ryan White paperwork so people can have those services. We are really trying to meet people where they're at and provide services in an equitable manner.
Other comments? Council Beck?
I saw on the memo you mentioned that, that the community partners are continuing to advocate for additional resources from the main CDC. Is there anything that the council can do to help with that? Like, is there a letter we could send, that we could agree to sign, something to also kind of help with that push of, hey, we need some help here?
That's a great suggestion, and I would love to explore what that could look like.
Okay.
Our organizations are going above and beyond to address the concern in the community right now.
Any other questions, comments?
Yeah, and if you don't have me now, and you know where to find me, so.
Oh, yeah.
So the syringe service program, so we already mentioned the MOU. And really this point here is to talk about our continued support of Wabanaki and the important work that they're doing. Syringe services is an important tool in this outbreak response. If you look at what happened to Scott County, Indiana, with their HIV outbreak some years ago, they had no service syringe providers, and they had over 180 cases of people with HIV with a risk factor of injecting drugs. So I know that there has been some conversation of like, well, we have an SSP, why are we still seeing transmission? My message is, if we didn't have a high quality SSP like Wabanaki, we would be in a worse situation than we are right now. Public health nursing. So I just want to draw your attention. We talk about homelessness a lot here. And I just want to highlight another population that we're seeing that's struggling. In the past five to 6 months, public health nursing has received referrals for, I have to put my glasses on, sorry, has received 6 referrals for women who are pregnant, who are in some place of homelessness, whether they're couch surfing, whether they are in a shelter, and we're providing those services. In talking with our public health nursing program, this is the first time that they have seen this population in this way. We are receiving those referrals. We are providing maternal and child health services where these pregnant people are at, whether it's at a warming shelter, whether it's at a food pantry. We are making every effort to make sure that people are getting the services no matter what their housing status is, and continuing to link them to the resources they need for ongoing stability. The next bullet is a follow-up. I believe the last time that I came and gave an update, I mentioned in the update that our program was working with the School-Based Health Center to provide tobacco treatment. And the question was, how many people had we served? At the time that I gave that update, we were really just kicking off the program. At last numbers, as just about last week when I reached out to program staff, they had seen 6 students to date through that referral process at Bangor High School School-Based Health Center. Our program staff will be doing presentations with school staff to really promote the program so that as many people within the Bangor High School know that that resource is available for any student there. We see a lot of promise in that program. My accreditation update, we are at the phase of doing strategic planning for our department. I think this is a really exciting opportunity to think about where public health and community services could be growing and strengthening here for the city of Bangor. One of the steps in that strategic planning process is getting feedback from our staff on what their vision is, from partners, and from you as city council members. So in working with our consultant, they have put together a survey that we will be sharing with you for you to be able to provide input on where you would like to see the direction of Bangor Public Health and Community Services. So that will be coming into your inbox from Debbie very soon. There's a lot of changes that are happening at the federal level. Whether it's changes in federal workforce or policy or funding. We have not been impacted directly by any of those funding changes at this time. We continue to monitor, we continue to do the work on the ground until anything shifts. And I'm always happy to have more conversations of what that looks like, but I will keep you updated, and we're keeping a close eye. Our department does depend mostly on federal funds for us to do our work. So this is something that we are watching really closely. And we'll keep you informed as we're impacted. Update on the letter of interest that we sent to MIHA for Maine Health Access Foundation. Last time I was here with you, we talked about a letter of interest that we submitted, looking at primary care here in the Bangor area and what role Bangor Public Health could be in being a bridge program around providing linkage to resources, information, maybe even some additional services in our clinic. 65 letter of interest went to MIHA. And speaking with some from MIHA, that's one of the most that they have received in potentially in their history. I believe it was 20 organizations were asked to submit a full application, and we were one of those 20. So we will be doing writing an application after we get your approval, and about 8 to 10 of those applications will be funded. We are seeking funding for a planning grant, not an implementation grant. A planning grant allows us to explore what opportunities could be, what other models are out there, talk with our partners and community members. So you will receive an order
On the next council
on the next
agenda.
council agenda to grant us the approval to submit an application. And Maine Health Access Foundation is not federal funds, it's foundation funds. Infrastructure funding. So the city was awarded workforce and infrastructure grant through Maine CDC some time ago, and it had already made its way through the city council process. But I wanted to reflect on it for a moment because I believe at the last city council meeting, there was some public comment with a concern about the increase in STI rates here in the Bangor area. And I guess excited, maybe is the word I can use. I'm excited to tell you that as part of some of our infrastructure funding, we're going to be purchasing a new STI testing machine, you could say. Right now, when someone comes in for STI testing in our clinic, it can take up to 5 days to get the results. That's too long. So this new machine will allow results in 30 minutes. This will be a game changer for us to be able to provide really quick results to somebody who really needs them so that they can get the treatment that is appropriate for them. Some of that funding will also help us to support a consultant to help with accreditation, to be creating a position called the infectious disease specialist position, which is only funded through this infrastructure funding. So we are looking forward to being able to use that funding in a way to build our infrastructure and capacity in a meaningful way that addresses the needs of the community. Letters of support. So we have been approached by 2 different organizations to provide letters of support. The first one, we have been asked by Penobscot Community Health Center to provide a letter of support, to sign onto a letter of support for them to apply for federal funds to support Ryan White services in their clinic. These services support people who have HIV. It provides them with a lot of wraparound services and care to, again, break down a lot of barriers that people can experience. We are not part of the grant. We would just be signing on as an entity with a list of many other community organizations to support their application. So that is something that I would need your approval for Debbie to sign on to that letter.
Yeah, generally, if there's no objection, we typically move forward with that as it doesn't bind the city in any real way. It's just, as she's mentioned, a letter of support.
I moved that we,
It doesn't require.
it doesn't require that, okay.
Any objections, I guess?
Yeah.
There's
If
no
somebody
objection.
voiced an objection, we might ask for
Sure.
approve or a vote, but since there's not, we'll go ahead and submit that.
Okay.
And then the other letter of support is for St. Joseph's. Is to support their request for congressionally directed spending, funding to improve its emergency department. So this is, some of the oftentimes organizations will put in that request, and they are looking to expand their emergency department. I would add St. Joseph's has been another one of those really important partners helping us to address the HIV cluster and have been kind of a model, in some ways. And so any objection?
You have a thumb and some head nods.
Okay,
so I
great.
think You're probably okay.
I'll go with that. An update on opiate settlement funds. So we are continuing to plan for that community input. I will say, the opiate settlement funds are continue to be this kind of like revered funding that we want to use in the most thoughtful way possible. And so as we are navigating what's happening with federal funding, addressing needs of the community and in the most urgent way possible, we still feel that we should be moving forward with these community input and listening sessions. So we have put a draft plan together to start those sessions in the spring. Part of our plan includes creating a video that our community could watch before going to a community meeting so they can learn about the opiate settlement money before they come to a listening session. And so right now, the step that we're in is finalizing a budget to accompany that plan. We're also looking at not just gathering information from community members, but a lot of stakeholders and organizations that are doing this work.
Also back.
The budgets for, how much opioid settlement money is be available to spend, or the budget for putting on these workshops?
Thank you. The budget for putting on the workshops.
Okay.
Any other comments, questions on that?
I do
particular
have
point?
one more bullet that's a late breaker. We have become aware of another funding opportunity with the John T. Gorman Foundation. This is, again, a foundational money, not federal money. Bangor Public Health and Community Service received these funds back in 2019. We're looking to pursue an application. Again, a lot of partners in our community receive funding. It is sort of direct. It's to provide direct services, particularly for those people who are experiencing poverty in our community. So we are looking to put together a proposal the funding can be a maximum of $30,000. So that's not staffing. That's like direct service materials to help us do some of our work with a focus on, ensuring health equity. So we're putting together what those things would look like, but you'll be seeing an order coming your way to apply for those grants as well. That grant funding as well.
When is that due?
The end of March, same as NEHAF.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
Does somebody in your department work on that? Is that a new grant writer for the city to do that?
Oh, no, Jenny Doyle, our public health
She
nurse,
does that, that's what we have, yeah.
she's helping to get
Yeah.
the proposal. We've asked the department to come together with what would be some good possibilities for
So
using
that's what
that.
she does, yeah.
So Jenny's just
Okay,
helping to
yeah.
gather the information
Yeah.
for this one.
Did you touch on state working group? The state working group?
Oh,
No,
the
okay.
Harvard
Sorry.
Health Center. Sorry, yes, that was in the last update. There's been an update since. So the Harm Reduction Health Center group that both Jason and I actually sat on finished its work. It provided a plan to the legislative body that requested this report. This was 6 months. I forget how many meetings. As I mentioned, the committee was made up of a diverse group of people, including law enforcement, municipal government, community-based organization, advocates, healthcare providers. And again, the report was to put together our findings from the meetings that we had together, all the people that we met, all the programs that we were introduced to, and then provide some recommendations. So I will go right to the heart of the matter that you probably want to be most aware of is when it came to local government and municipality, the way that sort of finding and recommendation was written with a lot of input from Portland as well, is that municipalities could opt in if a harm reduction health center was something that was wanted for that community. The final report was, Debbie has a copy of that, and we'd be able to share what that final report looks like to you.
Councilor Trumbull?
I just read Gordon's cover letter, and in his cover letter, he said they didn't take a position for or against his budget.
No.
But you sounded like they said.
It was a recommendation. It was a recommendation. So there is no specific guidance on here's a piece of legislation that you
Right.
should or should not do. The report was really all the findings that the
Right.
work group had. However, there is a summary of those findings and recommendations for policy moving forward. So the recommendation around municipality was an opt-in strategy. So, yeah, there was no.
So if there
official
was a
study.
law, it would be a municipality could opt in.
Correct, that's the recommendation.
Council Leonard?
I just wanted to go back to a conversation that we were having earlier. Thank you for the presentation, by the way, Jen. So it does put a little fear into my heart knowing that about 75% of your funding does come from the federal government. And my expectation and hope is that that funding is going to continue to come in to help with the services that your department provides. I think it's very important for us to use this as a wake-up call to develop more relationships within the state and potentially within New England in general to create more network, social, and support groups for programs such as PCHS. And I only say that because one, it would probably be advantageous if we had those and we continue to get federal funding, but in the horrifying chance that that does get something happens to that, we will at the very least start this work to developing other relationships in the future. And I can't believe I'm like saying all this, but this is just, I think, prudent on us to do this just because your department would be heavily affected if federal funding, even 50% of it got cut.
I appreciate you sharing that and being aware of our situation. I started my job, I'm on my last month of probation, April 1st, it's official, I've been here a year. And I think I've gotten like maybe 100 more gray hairs just in the past like 3 months as I think about sort of what's happening and how I really want to protect our work. So I appreciate you being aware and recognizing where we are.
Council Pelletier?
Thank you. My question is actually about measles. So, it's on the rise all over the country,
Yes.
7 or 8 states having pretty substantial outbreaks. What role is your team playing, if at all, in sort of monitoring or making measles vaccines available? And what do you need council to do?
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And honestly, it wasn't until about last week that I was thinking, oh my gosh, we need to start really thinking about what role we want to play here in this community, particularly around measles. So we are staying aware of the situation in terms of all the data that we receive, either from, some of the national data that's coming out, even from CDC, where there's health alerts, and we look to some national experts that keep us updated. We are fortunate in that we do have high vaccine rates in Maine. I would like to see them higher. Our vaccine clinic does offer MMR vaccine for those people who meet the criteria for our clinic. I have a meeting with Jenny Doyle this week to actually start to think about what role do we want to take and really making sure that the community is aware that they can come to us to get vaccinated and to be a source of information to the community on facts, dispelling any misinformation and providing any guidance as needed.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Council Push?
I have a couple of questions. Very excited to see a plan for some strategic planning. And I wondered when will you know you are going to be a candidate or will receive any of the grant money from NEHAF? Do you know when they're going to respond?
Yeah, so the application, I'm sorry, is due at the end of March. And I believe it's not until about May that people are informed if they're funded. And then the funding starts, I believe, in June, if I have that time. It's right around that timeline.
So that would be handy for any strategic planning moving forward, I assume.
Yeah.
And with your strategic plan, would you be doing a workshop that would have a group of people, other stakeholders, for input for your strategic planning, I assume?
That's a great question. We did a lot of community input for the community health improvement plan, because that plan is for the whole community. For our specific department, we haven't thought about going external outside of the survey. But that is something that we could be open to.
Be good. And then lastly, have you had any information or are you aware of an uptick also in maybe even a false positive, but a lot more TB tests coming up, especially within the school age children?
That's something I will have to explore a little bit more. I know that they are struggling with TB down in southern Maine. But let me do a little bit more visit. Is there a particular situation that you, okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comments?
I just want to say thank you for supporting your local health department. We really appreciate it. You know, we feel really special and unique. We're one of two in Maine, and we feel really well supported. And so thank you.
Thank you. Our last item, well, not our last item, but the next item is the order for the remote meeting.
Yes. So when, as you started off this meeting, Counselor Hawes, with the public comment policy, it kind of prompted us to look through these standing policies that we have for these meetings. And we discovered that the remote meeting policy needed to be updated, excuse me. It is mostly housekeeping in nature. It still references Facebook Live instead of our switch to YouTube Live. It also references the airport committee, which now comes in under business and economic development. And I'd just like to make it more clear that it's City of Bangor and add our logo on the top. So really, it's pretty straightforward. But if the committee is supportive, this will be on the next council meeting agenda.
Do we have agreement to that? Consensus, yes. Oh, Councilor Leonard, your hand is up.
Yes, I do have a few notes I want to run by. Regarding going on YouTube Live and Facebook Live, my general thought on this is, why don't we stream on as many social media platforms as possible, just to make it easier for all users to access what's going on in their city. I'm talking even TikTok and Twitch or other social medias, and I think even going back to Facebook is also really important, just because so much of our community exists on Facebook. Not as many people go to YouTube Live. I remember when we used to get a lot of hits on Facebook videos. I talk like I'm an influencer or something, but it is important to make sure that this content actually does get out there. And I think we really restrict ourselves from only having a YouTube Live. I think we should, at the very least, if we want to have one place where we do the live committee meetings, I'm totally fine with that. But I think our new policy should be to upload our meetings to as many different social media sources as possible. And I'm happy to provide just off the head list of what social medias that we can start to go on and promote these meetings more. But I fear that there's not as much public engagement going over to YouTube Live, and having the comments off is certainly not a great way to get a lot of people's feedback, regardless of what the banter is on there. That's just one note I have, though.
Yeah, I think just to speak a little bit to that, I don't think Zoom actually allows us to live stream on more than one platform. And we did make the switch to YouTube primarily because on Facebook it was skewing our the statistics that that Meta gives us in terms of when you have the most outreach. For example, when you post things. And so that was kind of the driving factor. I will say I'm happy to dig into more of the statistics, and certainly we can explore some of those other options. But I have noticed that on average, YouTube Live does tend to stream, between 6 to a dozen or so folks on average, which for the most part was similar to Facebook, not always, depending on the the items that were being discussed, but I think that we've also tried really hard to make sure too that the links and the knowledge and that the ability for folks to watch live while also making sure folks know that if they want to engage, they would need to do that through Zoom or by attending in person. But happy to look into more of that, Counselor Leonard.
Sure, I appreciate that. And again, it's literally just to expand our reach as a city and to make sure we get as much public feedback as possible. So I did have another note regarding well, the airport committee being removed from this body as well. I guess I'm feeling a little bit torn about this. Like, I don't know if Director Saavedra is in the room right now, but I would like to ask him a question regarding the council not having an airport committee anymore. Is he in the room right now?
He is, and actually he'll be giving an update in BNED. And I think that your question actually speaks more to what's an ordinance and less about this policy specifically. If that makes sense.
Well, no, my question to him was going to be, would the airport benefit more from not having an airport committee? If the answer is yes from him, I mean, I'd be supportive of going forward in this structure, but if there is any sort of opinion that he believes that an airport committee removing it would potentially hinder the airport's development, I would also like to hear that as well.
Be clear, we don't have an airport committee.
Not
I
anymore.
understand.
Removed.
It's been historically it's been moved back and forth every now and then, and so I'm just thinking out loud here. Do we want to act like for the foreseeable future having an airport committee, or are we comfortable with it existing under BED primarily?
Councilor Leonard, are you looking for comments from the council at that point with what you
Yes.
just asked? Okay. Does the council have?
Maybe with some more input from the airport director, you know, what he thinks the advantages or disadvantages of that would be, and those that have some history on council from when we did have the airport committee.
Maybe it's good we don't have one. I think we always had one when things weren't going great at the airport. So if we don't have one, it means they're going good, so to say.
I would concur with that. I mean, I think the airport is such an entity that the committee at some time didn't really benefit having our input into the airport operations. I think we get more information now from the airport director than we did when we had those separate committees, and I don't know about you, but.
Yeah, well, especially now because all the committees are 5-member committees. At
Mhm.
the time, the airport used to be, I think, a 3-member committee.
Yep.
Or most of the committees used to have less members on them. So now every committee can make pretty much a majority decision.
Personally, I don't mind not having an individual airport committee. I think having it under business and economic development, having the director come in and give us the updates as he does, and he will again tonight. And they talk about everything that the committee wanted when it was in force, as far as, you know, the numbers of the ridership and the whole 9 yards. I think it's been helpful having that.
And the only reason I bring this up is because it's the one of the largest pieces of valuable transportation that we have in this area. I mean, even Quebec City doesn't have an airport, and so I I don't want to potentially ruin a relationship there that's already been established. But if the majority of the council wants to go forward with this, and if Director Sadra is also inclined to agree with what seems to be the majority of council, I'll shut up about it. But it just seems a little. It just seems. I wouldn't personally want to cut ties with the airport committee, but that's just me.
Something says that if we come into the future where we need one and there's a purpose where we need more direct attention with the committee, that we can't bring it back up and talk about it again.
Yeah, that's true. And really, my understanding is, the airport committee was really just enveloped into business and economic development because both those two departments work closely together on a lot of their properties and things.
Mhm.
But certainly the council could at any point have a discussion about bringing that committee back if you felt it was warranted. I do think that that might be a good question for BNED to discuss, as opposed to.
Sure,
this-
we can save it till then. I'm fine with that.
Thanks. Thank you, Councilor Leonard.
Council Beck?
Just want to get clarification on footnote number 7 on the last page there. It says public participation in the meeting, maybe through remote means, includes Zoom and the city's Facebook page.
Oh, that was one I missed.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Yep. Yeah, thank you for pointing that out, Counselor. Essentially, all the references to Facebook Live are meant to be, removed, at least for now, not to say we couldn't go back later.
Other comments on this? The remote policy?
I would just say thanks for pulling this out and doing this.
Thank you. If I could actually have a
She needs a
motion.
motion.
Yeah, I'll make a motion for this. Absolutely.
Second,
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we do authorize the amendments to the remote meeting policy. This will go to the next council meeting as well.
I sure will.
If there's no objections, and I see none, no hand up there. Okay, we're good. Now, you have a couple of other items before we finish up, correct?
Yes, if you don't mind, a couple items kind of came to our attention a little late. The first actually has to do with testimony in support of LD 487, a resolve directing the Northern New England Passenger Rail Authority to apply for federal funding for the purpose of identifying the rail corridor connecting Portland to Orono as an intercity passenger rail corridor. We're bringing this forward because actually it was Councilor Leonard, I think in the past really felt pretty strongly about this, and the council has taken a position supporting such studies. And so I had two questions. One, make sure everybody was okay with us supporting that LD 487, and two, if so, was there counselor, even Councilor Leonard potentially interested in actually submitting this testimony on behalf of the city?
First part of that, is there anyone that is opposed to us supporting LD 487? I see no one. Second part, Council Leonard, would you have an interest in presenting the testimony?
Sure. When would you like it? I can write one up tonight, and you can review it at your leisure, and then give a thumbs up if you like it or not.
Yeah, we actually have one drafted, which I think.
Oh, perfect.
City manager, yeah, we try to make it easy for you. And really, it would be your name. I think the testimony is actually scheduled, or the hearing scheduled for the 6th, but if you are unable to actually make it in person, it would still be submitted with your information as well as the council chairs in case anybody had questions, but certainly if you're able to attend and actually speak directly on the testimony, that's always a great option too.
Yeah.
But I'll give you the.
And also just for the public, you can also testify via Zoom as well. Depending on how my leg goes, I might be in person or I might be via Zoom, but either option works.
Thank you very much, Counselor.
All right. That was number one.
Yes, and then the other was actually, it is, we've been requested by the Federal Transit Administration, excuse me, I always want to call them the authority, but they're an administration, FTA. to have the council approve a resolve that would authorize the city manager to execute and file an application for federal assistance. It's, as many of you know, we receive formula program assistance through FTA that supports our community connector directly, and we are a direct recipient of those funds. And so really, this ensures or commits to the FTA that the city manager is authorized to execute and file with its applications, the certifications, the assurances, and all the other lovely things that we submit on the city's behalf for the community connector. And I actually believe recently you did something similar for CDBG. So this does seem to be a trend coming from the federal government, because I'm not sure we've done one of these recently, because typically when we get funds, it does come through your formal process and you do authorize the city manager to act upon that. This is just a reassurance to FTA that the city manager is authorized on the city's behalf to make those assurances. So if you are all okay, this will go actually on the next council meeting for formal approval.
Is everyone in agreement with that? That the city manager would be authorized to do that? Seeing no opposition. Council Lonnie, you okay with that? Okay. Seeing no opposition, off to the next council meeting.
Yes, thank you. That's all I have.
That's it. Okay, if there's no further business, which I think we just finished it up. There's no other comments. We will adjourn this meeting. Stay tuned for business and economic development coming right up in the next 5 minutes.